Hello everybody, this is McIsaac speaking. You want to be on camera too again, do you? Felix. Alright, everybody can see you. Okay? Yeah. Felix. He's such a star. Okay, anyway, I got my pirate stuff on today. If people are kind of new to my work, I'm going to have a George Wilson story time. I am a Christian in this life, but God has been very gracious to me. I also believe about reincarnation. I know that reincarnation's a fact. And I've been able to trace quite a number of my previous incarnations. Okay. My husband, Archie, I'll put a link to his video in the description or in the comments section down below. He had a saying. He was a seer. He was a Scottish Highlander, of Highlander and Jewish descent, and he was a seer. He was a very spiritual person, and he had the saying that he was really famous for everybody who actually knew him. He would say, "You must understand, I am the teetotaling pirate king." That's what he would say. And I'd say, the first time he said this, I said, "What do you mean, Archie?" And he said, "I am the teetotaling pirate king." And I said, "Who's that? That doesn't even make any sense." It doesn't even make any sense. Everybody knows that pirates are all wild drunkards. And I said, "No, I was the pirate king." Hang on a minute. Oh my gosh, Bria wants to come out. I better let her out. Come on, off you get, Felix. Off you get. If everybody wants to know, I can never seem to work out how to... Come on, out you come. I can never seem to work out how to edit videos and upload them successfully to YouTube. Hello everybody, there's a Bobby Bria. So we do these videos in lifetime. There's interruptions from dogs and cats and all sorts. Anyway, Archie had a saying that he was famous for locally when he was alive, and that was, "I am the teetotaling pirate king." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I have past life memories of being a fellow called the teetotaling pirate king." He said, "I don't remember my name. I don't remember my name, but I remember my life. And I remember it like it was my childhood, like it was an earlier part of my life." And I went, "Oh, okay." I'm not sure that I ever actually believed him fully in his life. But he would say this just every now and again. You know, it's just his catchphrase. "I am the teetotaling pirate king." I went, okay. So anyway, we did past life regression work together, and when he was alive. And we saw that I was his lover in that life, and that I was a surgeon, and that I was female, but I pretended to be a male. And so everybody thought that we were homosexuals. But somehow that was okay. And at the time, I knew nothing about Golden Age piracy. Nothing. I didn't know that homosexuality in Golden Age piracy in the Caribbean and Africa and, the Atlantic was almost universally accepted and normalized. I didn't know any of that, but that's what I saw. And I saw that nobody ever figured it out that I was female. Nobody ever figured it out. And that meant that, everybody thought that we were homosexuals. And that there was some very good reason that I couldn't see, Archie couldn't see, but that we could have a pretty good guess at the reason why it would be dangerous for me to ever come out as female. That is, that's what we saw in our past life regression. And this would have been, 1997, 1998, 1999. And we went back and we said, okay, Archie said, okay, well, I think there's a life that we had before then. Before we were pirates, should we do a past life regression to see if we can go back further? And I said, yeah, all right. So anyway, we did another past life regression and we found out that we were highwaymen in this earlier life. And I knew nothing about highwaymen. I probably knew more about pirates than I knew about highwaymen, and I knew very little about pirates other than the rampant drunkenness of Caribbean piracy. It was wild. But anyway, I knew even less about highwaymen other than they, stole things, rode around in the dark and all the rest of it, which I thought was kind of fun, the idea of it. But that's what we saw, and that we lived in a great house together and lived as nobility during the day, and at night I once again changed into men's clothes and went out robbing people all night, including my friends and relatives. And one of the questions that I asked Archie was, in your pirate life, how many ships did you take? That was a question that I asked him. And he said, I lost count at about 300, but it must have been over 400. Bartholomew Roberts took 470 ships during a 2.5-year career. And anyway, I found that out later. I'll get into that after. Oh my gosh. And we asked in the past life regression how many robberies we had committed as highwaymen. And the figure came up around about 3,000. That's a lot of robberies. That is a lot of robberies. Now, there's a number of things about this that has convinced me that this is real, okay? For one thing, when I never believed about reincarnation. I was brought up as a Christian, Presbyterian, and when I was in, you would call it tweens or early teens, my dad converted to Catholicism, and I began my catechumenate, but I never completed it because I kind of went off the rails a little bit when I was about 15. Funny that. Stopped going to catechumenate classes, catechumenate classes, and was never baptised as a Catholic. But later on, when I moved out of home, I moved in with my sister, and my sister was going to a Pentecostal church, a very fundamentalist Pentecostal church, and I was baptised as a Pentecostal. Ironically, I was actually baptised. The church that I was going to had a Bible college at the rear of the church. They trained pastors at this church. And ironically, Archie was a pastor. He was an ordained minister of religion in this very Pentecostal church. Was the very church that ordained him. He went to the Bible college up the back and personally knew the generation of pastors in the church that I was baptised in before I got there. There was a big split in this church. That's all beside the point. But that's history. That's the way that history, I sometimes describe history as being a cloth. It weaves into each other. Archie was baptised, and actually he sold his house in the Dandenong Mountains at one stage to get this Bible college out of a financial pickle when they were first beginning. And so they, he did his work. He knew about the Bible. He was a missionary. He was a pastor. Like I said, see the link in the video below. But he also had these past life memories of being the teetotaling pirate king. He didn't remember his name, but he remembered what he did, including how he became the pirate king, the teetotaling pirate king. And that was that they were in a port and they were under false flags, and they were up to no good. And there was a group of them that went ashore, and one thing and another, they all got killed. And he was, of course, the navigator, so he got their ship out of there before they could close the port entrance. It was actually really pretty close. That's exactly what happened with Howell Davis, the death of Howell Davis, Captain Howell Davis, and then because he had gotten them out of there, they elected him to be the new captain of the pirate organisation, the pirate ship. And so that's how he said that's how he became the pirate king. That was the start of it. Anyway, what happened was I wanted to figure out how I fitted into all of this, and so we asked a question and did a regression. We saw that I was a pirate surgeon. I think I've mentioned this. Oh, I was a ship surgeon, and I met Roberts. I had quite a crush on him. I was quite in love. And so when I saw that Roberts was taking our ship, I knew a bit about herbs. I knew a little bit about. I knew a bit about apothecary, which is pharmaceuticals, and this isn't in the history books. This is what I remembered. I remembered drugging the captain of the ship, and the people in charge of the ship. I remember drugging them. Yeah, just send them off for a bit of a nap for a little while. They'd wake up. But then I went in their place and met Roberts. And when Roberts had found out what I'd done, the teetotaling pirate king found out what I'd done. That was it. He was really impressed. And so there we are, and we became lovers. This was, my point here is this is my past life memories, and this is what Archie and I remembered in our past life regression, and also quite a bit of it Archie just flat out remembered, like you would remember an earlier part of your life. But we did past life regression and we got more detail. I want to read here on my other device. I've got loaded the history, the website, because I never researched any of this on the internet until 3 months after Archie's death. So I knew nothing of any of this up until 3 months after he died. Basically knew nothing about Caribbean piracy, didn't know who I was. I have on my other device piratesurgeon.com. This was one of the sites that I found a long time ago. That's why it looks old school. It is old school. It's been there for a while. I will read it as soon as I can get it legible for my eyes. Okay. It's not entirely accurate. I've gone to the original sources since then. But here we go. Pirate surgeon George Wilson. George Wilson has the somewhat dubious distinction of having been captured by Bartholomew Roberts, the teetotaling pirate king, my note, being captured by Bartholomew Roberts' crew of pirates twice. He was first captured while with the crew of John Tarleton's ship. At his trial, Thomas Tarleton told the court that when Wilson was captured by the pirates the first time, wanting to oblige his new company, had presently asked for the pirates' boat to fetch his medicine chest away when the wind and current proving too hard to contend with, they were drove on shore at Cape Montserrado, present-day Monrovia, Liberia. Wilson gives a different account of his first voyage with the pirates, explaining that when he was first captured, Bartholomew Roberts told him, to his sorrow, that he was to stay there and ordered him to fetch his chest, not medicines, as asserted, which opportunity he took to make his escape, for the boat's crew, happening to consist of 5 French and 1 Englishman, all as willing as himself, they agreed to push the boat on shore and trust themselves with the Negroes of Cape Montserrado, hazardous not only in respect of the dangerous seas that run there, but the inhumanity of the natives, who sometimes take a liking to human carcasses. I got to make a point here. In that life, I was not a good person, okay? That's a lie that I told in that life when I was George Wilson. I wasn't trying to get away from Roberts. No, I lied in that life. I was not a good person, okay? Jesus Christ, by his good grace, enabled me to come back and find him as my Lord and Saviour. And in this life, I'm a Christian, but I've had some karma to pay, consequences. You cannot escape consequences. You can't escape karma. You've got to pay the piper. Okay, I've had consequences in my life, or things in that life, and also in the Lady Catherine Ferrer's Highwayman past life as well. We might get into that later or on another day. Anyway, keeping on going. Driven on shore with a cannibal tribe. This is history. Wilson remained stuck on the Cape for 5 months until Thomas Tarleton showed up looking to trade. The surgeon represented his hardships and starving condition to Tarleton, but was, in an unchristian manner, both refused a release of this captivity or so much as a small supply of biscuit and salt meat, ship's biscuit, and salt meat, jerky, jerky, because, as he said, he had been among the pirates. Tarleton had me all worked out. Ho, ho, ho. I was not a good person, and Tarleton knew it. You know, we had a little bit of a beef. We were not friends. Not long after that, a French ship showed up and paid his ransom to the natives. However, by reason of a nasty leprous indisposition that he had contracted by hard and bad living, he was, to his great misfortune, set ashore at Sestos. This text says in what is now Turkey, but it's not Sestos in Turkey, it's Sestos in Africa, not far from Montserrado, okay, on the Guinea coast. Note the rather interesting choice of words. One can't help but wonder if Wilson's indisposition was physical or mental by the way he states it. From my past life memories that I have, some of it through regression, some of it through me remembering, I was not in a good state of mind at that time. I was furious at having been, marooned by Thomas Tarleton. He was not my favourite person. Oh dear. Wilson, back to the text. Wilson was finally ransomed by Captain John Sharp of the Elizabeth. Sharp testified that he took Wilson off from Sestos on this coast, paying to the Negroes for his ransom the value of £3 5 in goods, for which he had taken a note from Wilson in lieu of payment, that he thought he had done a charitable act, till meeting with one captain. Next page. Canning. One Captain Canning. He was asked why he would release such a rogue as Wilson was, for that he had been a volunteer with the pirates out of John Tarleton, the Tarleton. This is history. This what I'm reading is basically being quoted from a book called A General History of the Pirates by Captain Charles Johnson, probably aka Daniel Defoe, who was contemporary with us at that time. Okay, although I don't think I ever met him, but it's likely that he met members of Robert's crew. You know, when some of them did return to London, some of them were pardoned, some of them were forced men, and they were pardoned. That means they were forced to be among the pirates, given a choice of, we'll cut your head off or you can join us. So most of the people who were given that choice joined the pirates, but they weren't willing. It was that or death. Okay, on with the reading. After Wilson was captured by the pirates the second time, Sharp told the court that Wilson asked the pirates if they had gotten hold of the note that Sharp had taken on his behalf, who, not being able readily to tell, he replied, "It's no matter, Mr. Sharp. I believe I shall hardly ever come to England to pay it." He never returned to England. He was on his way but didn't make it. Ever ready to apply the old oil, Wilson counters this in his account to the court by saying that Sharp generously procured his release in the manner he himself has related, and for which he stands infinitely obliged. He may have been obliged, but he doesn't go so far as to suggest that he intended to pay back his debt. Oh dear, in that life I actually was a rogue. I was. God has been very gracious for sending me back. He has. You know, I love God. I love Jesus. You know, Christians, they regard reincarnation beliefs as being like something of the devil or something like that. It's not. Sometimes God sends people back. And there's, I believe, cases of reincarnation in the Bible. And when you point this out to believers, they try and make excuses for it and say, "Oh no, that's not how it was, it's just spiritual." Of course reincarnation's a spiritual thing. Far out. Anyway, back to the text. I've got to keep reading this. Sharp's testimony mentions something else that proved to be difficult for Wilson to explain in court. When the Elizabeth was captured and Sharp became prisoner of Robert's crew, he discovered Thomas Tarleton, the captain who refused to ransom Wilson the first time, had been captured by the pirates. Thomson was immediately on Wilson's instigation in a most sad manner misused and beat, and had been shot through the fury and rage of some of those fellows of the town side, i.e. Liverpool men, if the town side, i.e. Liverpool men, had not hid him in a staysail under the bowsprit. For Moody and Harper, with their pistols cocked, searched every corner of the ship to find him, and came to this deponent's, Sharp's, hammock, whom they had like fatally to have mistaken for Tarleton, but on his calling out they found their error and left him with this comfortable anodyne, pain-relieving medicine, that he was the honest fellow who brought the doctor, Wilson. Wilson naturally explains it differently, suggesting that while he thoughtlessly used some reproaches of him for his severe treatment at Montserrato, but protests without design his words should have had so bad a consequence. Wilson then blames Roberts for causing Tarleton to be beat. For at this time Roberts is already dead. Okay. I loved him, but I was a rogue. Yes, I loved Roberts in that life. I loved him deeply. I was deeply devoted to him. But I was still going to try and pin all of my, legal guilt on him. Oh my gosh. I was a bad person in that life. In this life, I've tried to be godly. I really, really have. I've still had consequences. Karma. You cannot escape karma. It will get you. If you do the wrong thing in this life, that which you sow, you will surely reap. And it's not any person, not any human being that arranges it. It's of God. Okay? I shall continue. So I pinned all of my guilt. I said, "Oh no, it wasn't me. It was Roberts that did it. Him next door. The dead one that I love deeply, but I'm still going to pin all of my, guilt on him. All of my liability, and all of that. And oh my gosh, I was a bad person in that life. I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. I'm so glad that God saved me." Wilson then blames Roberts for causing Tarleton to be beat. For contrary to any intention of his, it should so happen because as a stranger he might be supposed to have no influence, and believes there were some other motives for it. I hadn't been long on the ship, but Roberts and I kind of had a thing going. So it gave me considerable status that I was Roberts' matelot. Matelottage was a thing in Caribbean piracy. That pair up. Most commonly, the unions were homosexual, which is why when, I, being a woman disguised as a man, and Roberts decided, let's have a matelottage, that means, basically pirate gay marriage. That was what matelottage was. It was also called messmate. But that's in the history books as well. But George Wilson was Bartholomew Roberts' messmate or matelock. Okay, let's keep going. The deposition from Adam Comrie, the Elizabeth surgeon, revealed similar aspects of Wilson's character who were particularly damning to his claim to be unwilling to be among the pirates. The prisoner was very... Next page. Oh, come on. The prisoner was very... alert and cheerful. The prisoner was very alert and cheerful, Comrie says, at meeting with Roberts. Hailed him, told him that he was glad to see him and would come on board presently. Borrowing of the deponent Comrie a clean shirt and drawers for his better appearance and reception. He signed their articles willingly and used arguments with him to do the same, saying they should make their voyage in 8 months to Brazil, sharing £600 or £700 a man, and then break up. When asked about this testimony, Wilson denied most of it. Liar, 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 pants on fire. I was, like I say, in that life. This is hundreds of years ago in another lifetime. I was a bad person. I'm not a liar in this life. I will not tell a lie in a court of law in this life. But in that life, I was a bad person. To quote Pirates of the Caribbean Blackbeard, I'm a bad person. I'm not in this life. But in that life, I was a bad person. Caribbean pirates were bad people. When asked about this testimony, Wilson denied most of it, explaining that if immaturity of judgment had occasioned him to slip rash and inadvertent words, or that he had paid any undue compliments to Roberts, it was to ingratiate himself, as every prisoner did, for a more civil treatment, and in particular to procure his discharge, which he had been promised, and was afraid would have been revoked if such a person as Comrie did not remain there to supply his room. Other witnesses said that Wilson seemed thoroughly satisfied with that way of life, and was particularly intimate with Roberts. Woohoo! Woohoo! They often scoffing at the mention of a man of war, and saying if they should meet with any of the turnip man's ships, they would blow up and go to hell together. Having such a relationship with Roberts didn't seem to blind the captain to Wilson's inherent faults as a surgeon. However, I should mention that I was a barber surgeon, not a university-trained, highfalutin academic surgeon. According to these witnesses, even Roberts told him on the complaint of a wounded man whom he had refused to dress that he was a double rogue to be there a second time, and threatened to cut his ears off. Wilson did have a couple of character witnesses from among the men who had been judged not guilty, although their testimony seems a bit tepid. Samuel Morwell says that he has heard him, Wilson, bewail his condition while on board the pirate, and desired one Thomas to use his interest with Roberts for a discharge, saying his employ and the little fortune he had left at home would he hoped exempt him from further trouble of seeking his bread at sea. almost there. This is written from history, the general history of the pirates by Captain Charles Johnson, probably aka Daniel Defoe. So this is quoted basically on this website. Other witnesses said that Wilson seemed thoroughly satisfied with that way of life and was... Oh, we've already read that bit. Sorry. Next. Have we finished? I think we have finished. Oh no, hang on. Oh, God help me. Oh, just hang on. There we are. We are just about finished here. Sorry, taking the time. Nicholas Butler reported that in 48 hours he was with the pirates. Wilson had deplored the wretchedness and ill fortune of being confined with such a company. Wilson also explained that he was young and rash, had been with the pirates for only a month, did not use any weapons or fight on behalf of the pirates, and had reported a planned mutiny by the pirates who had put on board the HMS Swallow. Wilson was judged guilty, but since the Swallow's commander agreed that Wilson had reported the planned mutiny, his execution was respited until the King's pleasure be known. That is the end of this reading. What I have been able to find out since then from other sources that have come up since 2003 when I was doing this research, other sources have come up. You know, what happened to Wilson after that was not known for very many years. They found out what happened to him through these things like ship's logs and things like that that came up, books that have been written, you know. George Wilson was, despite the fact that he was given the opportunity to plead for pardon, was not bailed. He was sent back to the dungeon at Cape Coast Castle, where he sat for quite some time, several weeks, several months, something like that. And he contracted the word that's used in the original sources, novel distemper, which translated into modern English is unknown African disease. Some of these African diseases can be really, really nasty. George Wilson, through the damp, through the cold, through the unhygienic conditions, contracted a novel distemper. And despite this, he was loaded onto a ship and sent back to England to quote-unquote plea for his pardon. Here the log, the official record says that he died 6 days out from Cape Coast Castle on the way back to England. What I remember having dreams from when I was a child until probably about 6, 12, 18 months ago, when I made this connection of being cast into a very deep, very dark place and being pulled down and tremendous pressure being applied to every corner of my body, being unable to breathe and knowing that this is the end. And then waking up with a start. Going, how? And as soon as I made the connection, as soon as I found out that information of George Wilson dying on the ship 3 months, however long it was, 6 days out of Cape Coast Castle, the nightmare stopped. Now, isn't that interesting? I believe that I was thrown overboard while I was still alive, very weak and unable to resist. And I, weighed down. I seemed to see some sort of blanket rug or something like that, something they wrapped me up in, weighed me down. Over the side I went, and I was still alive, and that was how I died in that life. I was 25 years old, so not particularly young for the time. I think that I looked young because I was not really male. So I looked younger than I was because I wasn't really male. I was really female, disguised as male. This has been a long video. The original point of it was, by the way, and I always said as a teenager and as a young adult, up until I met Archie, actually, I said, I plan on enjoying my life because I probably won't live longer than 25 or 26. Knowing nothing about nothing about George Wilson or Lady Catherine Ferrers. George Wilson died at the age of 25. Lady Catherine Ferrers died at the age of 26. Bartholomew Roberts was shot through the throat with a round of grape shot and was immediately wrapped in a sail, weighed down with chains, and his body cast overboard at the Calabar coast, which is near the Gold Coast of Africa. He had a premonition, Roberts had a premonition that he was going to die soon, and he ordered his sailors to give him this manner of burial. Archie also had a premonition that he was going to die, and he made me promise to bury him at sea. So he's buried off the Calabar coast, which is near the Gold Coast of Australia. See you later.